Welcome to another edition of Down the Road. In a little bit, we're going to be joined by Thomas Ambrosio. Now, he is a professor at North Dakota State University. He's an expert when it comes to foreign affairs. We'll get his take on what's happening with the Russians, and it's looking pretty dangerous. I mean, let's just be honest about that. So we'll visit with the professor on that. But our food supply. What's happening with our food supply, workers calling in sick, everything that goes with it. James Crean is a supply chain expert, and he's good enough to give us some of his time. James, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Joel.
All right, let's talk about what the most important thing is, though, the weekend. You're a football fan. I'm a football fan. Have you ever seen a weekend like that when it comes to the playoffs?
That was fantastic. I mean, both games coming down yesterday to the last play of the game, and boy, it was yeah. I mean, if you weren't a football fan before, you have to be one now watching those games. So that was terrific.
So I got to ask you, are you a Bronco fan?
No, I'm actually in Austin, Texas. So I'm both Texas teams are out. So I'm just rooting for good football.
Here's the sweet thing for me. Ready? You hate to cheer for somebody to do bad. Yeah, that's kind of a lie. But I'm a Vikings fan, which means that when the Packers lost, I was jumping around the house like Santa Claus in game. So it's just the nature of how things go. James wanted to talk to you a little bit about our supply chain when it comes to food. Grade it. Give me your take on it.
Well, it's a struggle right now, right? So we're definitely having issues with, just surely as you would imagine, with so many people being out with Omicron, that's creating issues across the entire supply chain, and it's hitting pretty obviously for everybody in various different parts of the grocery store. And you might get what you want, but you might not get the brand that you want, or you might have to wait a little bit. And it's really just sort of as Omicron is rippling through. There's other issues as well, but that's the big thing right now. As Omicron's rippling through the different companies, we're seeing some serious impacts.
During the COVID crisis, there's been winners and there's been losers. Obviously, the individuals that have been sick and what's happened overall to our economy. But we here in the upper Midwest, when you look at the big commodities that come from North Dakota, we're talking about food, we're talking about what agriculture produces, and we're talking about oil. And so, I don't think we have too much to whine about when you've got $14 soybeans and you've got $80 to $90 crude oil, but not the rest of the world isn't enjoying that, Jim.
Well, it creates winners and losers, to be sure. And so what's happening is you have these disruptions that are happening, and then part of it, of course, is just the government policy. I mean, that's what's giving us the high energy prices that we're experiencing with different pipelines being shut down and changes in policy. So all of these things play into the challenges that we have, and one person's challenge is another person's profit, I suppose, in some cases.
Well, my wife doesn't like to let me go shopping. That isn't a sexist comment at all. But when I go to the market, I'm one of those go down every aisle and never get just what's on the list. What's freaked me out a little bit about that is the fact that I see empty shelves. I've never seen that before with the couple of markets that I go to. And so are you seeing that nationwide?
Yeah, definitely. And we kind of do some polling and that, some surveys around, as well as just working with our clients, and we're seeing it across the country. There's shortages of warehouse workers, there's shortages of truckers, there's shortages of even folks in the retail, whether it's the grocery store, just getting sometimes the food is in the grocery store, it just hasn't made it to the shelf because they just don't have enough folks to get the product out to the shelf. So it's a function of just sort of hiccups in different parts of the economy.
Well, I want to talk about that a little bit, which is the workers that process this. I think the product is there. That's my own personal opinion, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we have a shortage of a lot of what would go on the shelf. I think we have a shortage of workers to put it on the shelf, and so I have to ask you: do you think that's true? Number one, and if it is true, do you think this is the new norm?
Well, I think there are multiple things that are going on. So it's sort of a good news, bad news aspect of things. So in the near term, the shortage of workers is the big issue. But there are transitions, right? So what happens when remember the toilet paper shortage that we had early on in this, right? And it wasn't we didn't have a shortage because we weren't producing toilet paper, and we didn't have a shortage because people were using the restroom more. It was that the toilet paper needed to go more towards folks' homes rather than going to the office or the factory because people were staying home. And so what happens when we have these issues with, people are getting, are staying home more. Well, they used to be going out. People were getting out. They're actually going to restaurants and having a good time. And when they get sick, they stay home. They need groceries from the grocery store. Demand at the grocery store goes up. Demand of product going to the stores drops. And so you have this shift, and that results in some folks not being able to get stuff where they need to be. So it could be just a demand shift, which does happen here, but and as well as worker shortages. And those shortages are going to probably continue short having a recession for the near term and intermediate term, I would expect.
So going to that, because the radio station that I work on a regular basis every day, you cannot listen to one of the blocks. We call them blocks. You'll say advertising, but you can't listen to a series of those on any break that we take without hearing somebody advertising for workers. One of the ones I heard today had a $3,000 signing bonus, had a full health benefit, had basically no skill set when you come in. I should say no experience. That's become the norm, and that same company, James, people fought to get on. I mean, when I was a state senator in that district, when Bobcat, and that's who I'm talking about here, is Doosan Bobcat, people were fighting to get on. They had applications in, and then retirements would come, and they'd be like, I didn't get that job. Now they could walk in and get a job instantly. What's going on there?
So, so there's some really interesting shifts that are going on in the economy. We're moving more manufacturing back to the U.S. We have, it started, in the last administration with the tariffs that were put on China. That caused people to start to think differently. Businesses started to think, are the finances there to bring the manufacturing back to the U.S.? But there's also some market-driven forces there beyond just tariffs and higher logistics costs. People in the U.S. are starting to want more and more customized products, and you can't have a customized product delivered to you from China and get it in a day or two. It's going to have to be built close at home, and so that's an overall shift that's happening in the economy as more and more companies are starting to customize their products. And so you're getting more manufacturing in the U.S., which is good news, and it does create some dislocations in the workforce. We need to train more people in high school and train more people in college and that for these advanced manufacturing types of jobs. And like you say, manufacturers are also training folks on the job, and so it's good for the American worker. And we have a lot of entrepreneurs that are also sort of starting their own businesses and getting out. Those statistics are kind of going through the roof as well as people decide, this Omicron or COVID thing in the workforce is getting too difficult to handle, and too many mandates, and then the mandates go away. I don't know what's going on. They get confused, and there's no clear policy. So over time, people are saying, maybe I just go start that job I was thinking, that new company that I was thinking about starting. And so we're getting more of that we're seeing in our business as well.
We're here in the upper Midwest. We have declining enrollment in higher education. We have the numbers consistently going down at some of our I shouldn't say that, because I think the one up north of where I'm at now didn't see its student population go down, but it did the year before, UND, and then NDSU saw it go down again. Is that because of what you're talking about? Can young individuals coming out of the high school make the type of money to buy that fishing boat right away, and so they don't need to go to college in their mind?
I think there's definitely opportunities to do that, and it's causing people to rethink what are the opportunities that I have. Do I need to go to college and spend the money to go to college and the time to go to college when I am not making money, but rather spending it? And instead, go into a good manufacturing job with a good company willing to train me. It's an opportunity that people need to be looking at, and I think we're gonna see more and more of those types of jobs popping up and growing. So that's good for the American workers.
So, James, let me ask you this, because there was a lot of talk about, offshore here, the container ships that were coming in, they were sitting waiting to be unloaded. The workers weren't there to do it. Of course, that goes into, the whole supply chain. Was it as bad as what it was being portrayed? And if so, has it been fixed?
It was bad. I mean, we had on upwards of 100 ships sitting offshore waiting to be unloaded, the fourth quarter of last year. And, the standard is there's 0 or 1 ship waiting, right? So it's way out of the norm. And what they've done is they've shifted to where more ships are sitting much further offshore, and they're being scheduled ahead of time. So they're actually coming into port slower, coming across the ocean slower. So it's a little bit more challenging to count how many ships are really sort of waiting, but the problem hasn't gone away, and it persists, and it probably will persist for quite a while. It's not just worker shortage there. There's a lot of very there's complicated logistical issues of getting empty containers and other things into the system and out of the system, out of the way. That also affect them, how the ships are loaded and unloaded. So there's challenges that they face in the ports.
How much this, James, is affected by politics, the politics of one administration over the other? You talked about, the tariffs that we put on China, and how business who relied on, the auto industry being a perfect example, had to rely on that product from Eastern Asia. When you look at that and you look at more entrepreneurial spirit here, you've got one administration to the other when it comes to a philosophy on that. So how big of a factor does the politics of a president play into just what we're talking about?
Well, there's challenges, right? So my philosophy is like a doctor: first do no harm, because American business, the folks are able to solve a lot of problems on their own. Energy is a input to every manufacturing organization, and high energy costs, that makes us less competitive and creates challenges. When the administration decided, just as COVID was starting to hit, that they were going to buy 500 million home tests and basically corner the market in home tests for 3-4 weeks while those tests were being made and stockpiled rather than being made and continued to pharmacies. And so people weren't able to get tests and weren't able to know that they should stay home. That probably didn't help the situation. So that, government can definitely play a role. Sometimes it's negative, sometimes it's positive. We've got some incentives that are out there, like the tariffs, and And certainly there's a lot of local government incentives, state and local governments that are encouraging. Companies like Intel just announced they're going to put 2 giant chip manufacturing plants in Ohio. That's great for our country. They're doing the same in Arizona. Got a couple of chip manufacturing facilities coming into Texas, where I am, and so it takes good government policy in order to encourage some of those big investments to happen.